As a contractor, I don't pay for materials I don't use. So why would I pay for stuff I don't need in my mobile plan? That's why my Biz plan from Verizon Business is so perfect. Now I can choose exactly what I want, and I only pay for what I need.
Right now, with my Biz plan, get our best price, as low as $25 a line. Visit Verizon.com/business to get started today. New lines only. Price per month with 5+ lines. Includes auto pay and paper-free billing and promotional discounts. Taxes, fees, economic adjustment charge. Applicable add-ons, prices, and terms apply. Guarantee applies to base monthly rate and stated discounts only. Add-on prices additional. Offers in March 31st, 2026.
By the time I hit my 50s, I'd learned a few things, like how family is precious. Work can always wait. And 99% of people over 50 already have the virus that causes shingles. Not everyone at risk will develop it, but I did. The painful, blistering rash disrupted my life for weeks. Don't learn about your shingles risk the hard way. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
New Year, same extra value meals at McDonald's. So now get 2 snack wraps, plus fries, and a medium soft drink for just $8.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
Thanks for listening to No Question About That. You can support this show by visiting patreon.com/NQATpod or in your Apple podcast feed. We do a backer show each week going deep dive into a topic related to United. Or if you don't want to part with your cash, an even better way is to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And now on with the show. Welcome to No Question About That. This is United Inc., our finance pod with me, Ed, and him, Jamie, or known to his folks as Subprime Goals. Is that on your birth certificate?
It could, yeah. Well, I don't want to give away too many secrets, but it might be.
Might be, yeah. Middle name.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamie, George, Charlton, Law, Subprime Goals.
Rolls off the tongue, right?
Really does. I wish I could have done that with my kids, but I wasn't allowed to get away with it. So. All right, packed agenda today. What a week we picked to do this with, well, something and nothing going on in the world of United takeovers. Yeah, it's more nothing than something at the moment. Okay, we're going to talk about that potential takeover or investment. What does it mean? Roll that into talking about the stadium and financing, because I suspect a lot of this rumours are more about that than anything on the equity side. Talk about the academy and infrastructure around that. Ops changes at United and the potential Saudi friendly. Maybe we'll roll that into a bit of Champions League news with A22 rearing their very ugly head all over again. Oh, and maybe a little touch on the Women's Champions League, since United played in that this week, and we'll talk about the finances there. All right. So, Turkey, as he is known to all with these 7 million followers on Twitter. He's the head of the authority that is investing billions of dollars in sports and entertainment, everything from golf and boxing in Riyadh to films and games and all that kind of stuff. Senior member of the Saudi government, not member of the royal family. So I guess he has to be nice to MBS or he might just get disappeared. You laugh, but they locked them all in the hotel and no one has ever seen all these people ever again from the last time we had a governmental change. Yeah,
I probably shouldn't laugh.
No, don't go near any embassies. That's my advice for you. Yeah. True story, I was offered a job at STC back in 2020. I decided not. I'd rather not. That's the Saudi 70% government-owned telecoms company. They've been very lucrative. Investment. So Turkey tweets, I have news, the best news, that we are near the end of negotiations to complete a deal. I can't remember the exact wording. It really does matter, actually, the exact wording of what he said there. I saw this tweet. Everyone was getting very excited about it, of course. And I was like, there's no way some guy who's a really senior member of the Saudi government has just tweeted insider information. I was just like, this is bullshit. Don't believe it. What was your reaction?
Yeah, similar. And if anyone's watched the Matchroom documentary that's recently gone out on Netflix, it's one about Barry and Eddie Hearn.
Yeah.
the business surrounding, built on boxing, darts, snooker, etc. They've obviously they've got a lot closer to Turki Al Sheikh, been doing a lot of business with him, Riyadh season, setting up fights around the world.
Yeah.
If there's anything to learn from that, is that Turki Al Sheikh operates very discreetly, arguably in the right way in terms of in ways of doing business, won't shout too loudly, will do the right things in order to get deals done. Him tweeting that to me was shocking. I genuinely could not believe it, to the point where actually I thought, has his account been hacked? Because it doesn't feel like the sort of thing that he would do.
Right.
And I think, look, we'll probably go into the wording, but it was exactly that. It was very strange. And we can get into, is it a full sale? Is it negotiating? Is it related to the stadium? I think, for me, in terms of credibility, look, if someone was actually involved in this sort of stuff, particularly someone like him, they would not be tweeting about it.
Yeah, he said, at an advanced stage of completing the deal, that was his first tweet. When he walked it back the next day, he said, advanced negotiation phase, very different. Wheeler in the Mail said, early days, no approach, and the club denied it to everyone. So really weird.
Yeah, and look, let's walk through what would have to be true for this to have any substance, right? You would have to believe, first and foremost, that someone or a consortium of people are now willing to pay as much as what the Glazers were asking for before Sir Jim Ratcliffe, at a time when, okay, there's been a lot of gutting in terms of the finances, but you're at the early stages of a rebuild, right? So you're still going to have to, you don't necessarily have to make as many difficult decisions, but you still would have to put in a lot of your own infrastructure, fundamentals, etc. Potentially plausible, but I'd say unlikely. You then
I mean, look at the price. So they are apparently still asking over $5 billion. I don't know if we actually have any information on that at all because they don't leak. Yeah. But the price Jim paid is equivalent to 4.2 billion plus debt, right? So that gets you to your 5-ish. There would obviously have to be a premium over and above. So Jim has a floor at, what is it, 33, I think, is right first offer. And so significantly above that, one would imagine. That puts it in a world of very, very few people on the planet, or governments, basically.
Exactly. And then, the tweet says, or the second tweet talked about, okay, well, it's not Saudi, it's another country. I think it was Chris Wheeler, as you mentioned, that said it might be UAE. Right, okay, so if it's people from the UAE, how does that look in terms of the institutions and the people associated with Man City? And not, because there would be a whole raft of things that would need to be true in order for that to make sense. Mm-hmm. And then there was the idea of a consortium being involved, right? So, sorry, ex-players being consulted and potentially taking on some form of role. Now, look, if they're not actually part of the investing consortium, that probably makes things a little bit easier. But let's say they were, and probably would make sense in terms of for them to really, truly have skin in the game. Okay, so who would the likely candidates be? Probably the class of 92.
And they're not that rich, apart from Beckham.
Yeah, and they also have, ties with other football clubs like Salford City. I can't actually remember if all of them exited on Salford City's recent investment, but I think they are all still involved. Mm-hmm. So they would either have to exit that, or they, would not be able to take part in the deal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you're looking at the likes of, maybe Cristiano Ronaldo, but if it's not Saudi, probably not him. You've then got probably Rio Ferdinand, Patrice Evra, who are located out there.
Again, just not enough wealth there. Apart from Ronaldo, who's probably worth north of $1 billion.
Yeah.
Beckham's in the hundreds of millions, and that's mostly tied up with Inter Miami, given MLS franchise costs at the moment. I mean, you couldn't buy an MLS franchise for less than $3 billion, which is mad given the revenues that most of these make, but that's much of Beckham's wealth. So I don't see it. I think that's one of these other stories leaked we're hoping to get sort of thing. And UAE I mean, it's complicated because it's not really one government as such, right? The money's actually in Abu Dhabi. These people are apparently from Dubai, where that isn't the money. Still, it's an authoritarian regime. You don't just go buy a foreign asset because you feel like it. It goes through the government. That's how the government works there. I don't know whether... I mean, they've been less aggressive on foreign investments as well, the UAE, than, say, the Qataris, who really have put money into a lot of foreign investments, and the Saudis. So I don't know. I can't see a path from here. Of course, you never know in business. Things surprise you. Given that a major takeover of or even a major investment of a public company, you really are supposed to keep this buttoned up. At least the what's actually happening behind the scenes, because that's all material. I have shares in United. Don't know about you. Not many, I have to say. But, in theory, that gives me standing to go, hang on a minute, you leaked material information that harmed my financial position. Here's my lawsuit.
Yeah.
Hand over some cash. Yeah. So, normally people are very careful. Don't know about you. I've done many, many hours of really fucking boring presentations that you have to go through and then answer a quiz at the end on regulations. So there you go.
Yeah, and look, I think the second tweet that came out from Turki Al Sheikh to me was kind of like someone's had a word, and said to him
you shouldn't do this.
You can't. Yeah, you can't be. Whether it's true or not, you can't be doing it. I think there are other potential avenues what this could be signalling, right? Like, there is still, the argument that, and still the possibility that the Glazers do want to sell some more shares or all of their shares. Mm-hmm. Could this be a negotiating tactic? Mm-hmm. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos do not necessarily have the funds right now, this could be, one of the things where they're kind of saying, well, actually, we do have potential interest in our shares. That could be feasible to me. And
of course. Yeah.
Remember the deal structure, right? It was a phased purchase approach over a number of years, and we're now 18, 20 months into that period, and there's been no further change. So, maybe that's one element. I think another thing is the stadium, right? Like, we know that the stadium is going to need some form of debt or equity, or both. And if, Ineos might be willing to stump up some of the probably debt to fund the stadium, if the Glazers aren't, well then, they potentially will have to do something with their position, if they actually want us to have a new stadium.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course they're shopping this around, private markets, public investment bodies, Middle East sheikhs and all of that kind of stuff. For sure they're shopping this around, and that structure could be a mix of debt or debt and equity, or long-term bonds, or and you've done a very long piece on all the potential avenues, and it will be part of all of these things: internal financing with ticket prices and bonds and that kind of stuff, public debt, private equity, Sir Jim putting stuff in. I mean, it's worth taking a beat and talking about Ineos as a company right now. I've seen some fairly hysterical tweets of people going, this company's collapsing. It's just not true. You don't, $20 billion worth of sales per year globally, or euros, about the same thing. I think they're quoted in euros. They do have a lot of leverage. I mean, it's about 6 billion euros worth of leverage. That's not uncommon, honestly, for a company in a capitally dense industry like oil and gas. I mean, they spent $5 billion on a new plant refinery in Saudi, right? So, I mean, Sir Jim has good relationships over there, clearly, given what they're doing. So none of this is really surprising. They did get downgraded to a double B on the debt, but look at the long-term forecast. They are eroding that debt over the next 3 years. So I don't know. I didn't look at that and go, this is a company that's about to melt down. But there are questions about exactly how much cash they would have on hand to do a big deal, like fully take over United or something like that.
Totally. And I think, look, Fitch and Moody's are always late cycle in terms of when they change their ratings on companies. And companies usually act ahead of that, and that's why you've seen Ineos exit a number of plants, exit a number of their sports ventures, probably kind of shore up their balance sheet and protect themselves through this negative part of the cycle. I think in the Times Business podcast that Sir Jim was on, he did actually say that, which I thought was pretty interesting, and not many people seem to have picked up on it, that none of the debt has covenants. None of Ineos's debt has covenants, which is pretty surprising to me. And they always carry at least around 2 billion, I think, euros of cash on the balance sheet. Yeah. So look, if they are cutting their cloth accordingly, minimizing the negative operational leverage, and i.e. the downturn in profitability from a 1 or 2 year negative cycle, kind of suggests that maybe they're kind of still planning to be able to put more money in. Obviously, we don't know, and we won't find out for some time just because of when they publish their results. Yeah, but it didn't. I think he was, in that Times podcast, he was very much talking around the long-term sustainability of Ineos and the direction of travel, and therefore where they need to put their investments, as opposed to, actually this is really quite bad, and if things don't change materially, then we're going to be in a materially worse situation. Obviously, he's he had a lot to say.
He had a lot to say in that about net zero and climate activism and stuff like that, right? He's fairly old school. You can imagine his kind of political direction on that one. And in fact, that podcast was mostly about Ineos business and very little about United, really, even though that made all the headlines. I wonder if Sir Jim, and this is an aside, not a finance point, really, you think he's surprised about just how much focus there is on him, because of this deal, and just how much criticism, and he's been shocked by it?
I think so, yes, because I genuinely think some of the things that he was saying early on were pretty naive in terms of the attention it would get and the scrutiny that would be put under. And look, he wouldn't be the first person that has kind of lived a under the radar sort of kind of existence as a relatively wealthy individual, come into the public eye and kind of been surprised by every single word that you say is hung on by people. Right. And so I've when I see him in interviews now, it does look as though he's toned it down a little bit. I think there are still moments where the PR people either at Ineos or United are probably kind of shaking their heads, putting their hands in their heads, but I think he has definitely been taken aback by it.
All right. Well, we'll see how this plays out. I mean, they're definitely looking for money for the finance stadium. So this is what I think is happening here. They will have no morals about where they get that money from. 100%, right? Whether it's US banks or Middle Eastern private investors, doesn't matter. They haven't come up with a crypto scam yet. Maybe they should do that. Jim Coin. All right. What some of the other stuff that came out, he said in that, and it was a kind of throwaway line, that the United's academy has not been run properly. You can make a lot more money out of it. I'm paraphrasing him, but this is effectively pointing at City and Chelsea, and to a lesser extent Liverpool, and how they're able to monetize their academy. United don't break this out in the accounts, but Aston Villa do, and it was 18 point something million they spent on the academy. So let's just make the assumption that United do something similar. So it's an expensive item on the balance sheet. Investing in academies, there's infrastructure issues as well. At United, they're going to have to invest in academy still, training out of temporary buildings, basically, or changing or doing their training in there. So, interesting question. Should the academy be a new revenue line for United in the way it is for Chelsea and City, who have made literally hundreds of millions over the last few seasons?
I think it depends on what the priority is, right? If that is the priority, I'm probably not in favour of that. I think the priority should be, can the academy consistently produce well-rounded individuals that are going to play for United or have a career at the upper echelons in football?
Right. And that has been the philosophy for as long as you can remember at United. Until the Glazers start starving you at cash, of course.
Exactly. And so, like, you know, there probably is an argument that there hasn't been enough players from the academy getting through to the first team. Now, whether that is an academy issue or a overall kind of first team environment issue, I think is probably pretty difficult to disaggregate. You know, you've had players like McTominay, Zalangas, etc., who have thrived elsewhere. Okay, maybe not quite at the top echelons of the game, but they have still got, you know, considerable amount of ability, and they didn't show their best colours all of the time at United. So, look, I think the criticism of the academy, I can see some elements of it. I don't fully agree with it. Could we be doing more to kind of get a return on investment there? Yeah, absolutely. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean we need to be selling players from the academy every single year for £30 million, right? But you need to have some that are
a balance there makes a lot of sense to me. I think there was a philosophy at United in previous years that they let players go on not much fees, right, as a kind of reward for being part of the United family for a while. They paid academy prospects fairly well, and then they let them go for a low fee. And changing that around has been a fairly long time coming. I mean, the reason why you'd think of the academy as the new revenue line is just competitive, right? If your competitors are pulling in hundreds of millions over a PSR period, then if you don't do it, you have a problem, right? You know, significant disadvantage, right? So it almost says that United have to invest in this, both primarily for first team. That means you don't have to spend money on outsiders. You typically pay them less as well, at least in their first couple of contracts. And if not at United, sold on elsewhere for good money. I mean, it's like, it kind of has to be that. Sir Jim was fairly frank in that assessment about the academy. He's not normally that critical publicly, but that kind of suggested criticism of, I mean, he never says it's the Glazers. He always says they're nice fellows. I really like them. But he said two things in this interview. One, when he was asked about Ruben Amorim and would the Glazers step in and sack him? And he said, no, that's not going to happen. They're thousands of miles away. We're on the ground, which was not quite true in Jim's case, of course, because, you know, he's a non-dom right? in Monaco. But then he was, you know, fairly critical of the academy as well. And it was close as he ever gets to being, you know, implicit criticism of the Glazer family.
Yeah, and I also think, like, again, like, let's look back probably a couple of years, maybe. You know, like, Dougie Freedman was touted as someone who was potentially going to be coming into the club at one point, and he was infamous for setting up Crystal Palace's academy and getting a real regular pipeline of talent coming through. So I think this has been on the agenda for a number of years. We've also now got Jason Wilcox and Stephen Torpey, who are, you know, well versed and well experienced in this. Yeah, and, you know, there's been a lot of changes of personnel in the academy, as we've talked about in the past, and Jim probably feels like it's easier to kind of say have that sort of criticism now that those people are out of the building.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah, you get rid of some classic business. This is new CEO comes in, you clean house on the executive side. Everything that went before was all wrong, and it was all their fault. You launch a new strategic review to work out where your priorities are, and then you start investing in those areas and sacking everyone else, right? So, you know, you could map this. I bet he's done this playbook in some of his. Well, there's like 60 different companies under the in-house group, but so I'm sure he's done this in some other areas too. So it's a pretty old school playbook in terms of how you do strategy. So yeah, fair enough. Blame everyone who's out the door. But it'll be interesting before we move off the academy to see whether United do invest in a new academy building. So Jim has not indicated he's going to put more of his own cash into this. You know, the new Carrington building was from that $300 million that he put in terms of cash. I mean, it's cost effective doing this, right? Because you'd amortize it over a long period. It doesn't make much difference on the P&L, but you need the cash to be able to do it in the first place.
Exactly. And, like, you know, could something I don't know how much it would cost. Let's say it was half of the first team cost, so 25 million. Do you combine that in as part of some form of equity deal for a new investor that comes in with the stadium, right? It's like we also want you to kind of share in this kind of like investment in the future, and you can have a good story out of this.
Piece of goodwill on the deal, which is exactly what the Glazers did with Ratcliffe anyway.
Exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised, obviously Stephen Torpey has to get his feet under the table, but once they've kind of started to get an indication of what those costings are, wouldn't be when we're talking about an equity deal and potentially hundreds of millions, or if not billions of, additional funding for a stadium, 25 million on top for an academy building probably isn't all that important.
Yeah. All right. Very good. That kind of brings us on to some of the operational issues. Amish Manik has joined from Brentford alongside Stephen Torpey, who's the new academy director. Interesting aside on Stephen Torpey, Brentford didn't have an academy. They had an under-23s, or a B side they called it, who played a bunch of friendlies, and they decided they didn't want to put the 20 million a year into their elite academy, tier 1 academy. They changed their mind after a while, and Torpey sort of built it from the ground up. He doesn't exactly have to do that at United, but he has a big job on his hands there. Manik's job looks like he's reporting to Jason Wilcox, and he'll have responsibility for kind of director of football operations, I think he's called. So less on the let's find players and technical side, and more on how much does this building cost, and are our travel arrangements on budget, and what sort of facilities do we need, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I also think it's quite like getting people from Brentford is a really interesting move. Like it's often talked about the owner of Brentford, owned a gambling business. Benham. Owned a gambling business, applied some of the kind of data analytics to, I think it was FC Midtjylland first, and then he's brought that in at Brentford, and, they've done remarkable things on, a relatively tight budget. So I think getting people in the building who have kind of experienced some of that is interesting. I think also, which hasn't been talked about as much, maybe because it's just not as au fait with the prevailing narrative, is what Brentford do for the community and how they really focus on like the mental side of player development. I was reading actually just earlier today, like they have they call it maybe a mental health bench or something along those lines, where coaches and players, it's just literally a safe space for them to go to on the training field, because of the pressures of being an emerging talent at a Premier League football club. I think that's incredibly interesting from kind of like a player development. And I think also just like being a good club, so to speak, the chances of you making it at United, even if you're in the academy, are so small.
Very, yeah.
I think if Torpey and Manik can also develop that part of thing, it was one thing that I think, you'll probably know better than me, that, back in the days of Ferguson and Gill, they were all on that train of, no, we need to kind of raise good, well-rounded individuals as well. I think that's actually a really smart move.
Yeah, I mean, United haven't given up on all of that. They pay for private school fees for the younger kids as well. They have a relationship with, I think it's called Manchester Academy. It's one of the private schools in the area. City do a similar thing where they are trying to build well-rounded players, those who drop out the academy stage, which is a massive amount. That I think Wenger said it. Something over 70% of players who play at an elite academy never make a first team appearance anywhere. Right? So your chances of even having a career are slight, let alone making it at the very, very top. It's a very steep pyramid, this, so give these kids as much chance in life as possible. If they're not going to make a good career, if they're not going to be at United, then they've got to make a good career. If they're not going to make a good career, then what are they going to do beyond that? It's kind of what's the best word for it? It's your responsibility as good employers, I guess, to make sure that happens. I mean, there's certainly a lot of criticism of European clubs in the past who'd raided African teams for boys and then just discarded them 18 and were like basically get the boat home on your own, and rightly that was basically a form of human trafficking, and so clubs are pretty responsible these days, and United do the same thing.
Yeah, and look, I think also, long term for the club, it's also a good thing, right? Like they may end up being future employees because they want to stay in football. They may want to go on data analytics or strength and conditioning, physio, like all of that sort of stuff. Like if you got people who have been in the building, know what the culture is like, and making having a good culture, I think it only serves all parties well, really.
All right, very good. We're racing through these topics. I feel like we might miss something out in this massive list of things we want to talk about.
I do, like on the stadium, we haven't talked about optional personal seat licenses and.
Yeah, let's go through that a little bit, because you got the fan survey that's gone out. Second fan survey, second phase, I think they called it, of fan engagement. Would you like to spend an extraordinarily large amount of money to have the right to buy an extraordinarily expensive seat? Will you be signing up for a, God knows what number this will be, bond at the new stadium? Actually, first, before we do that, explain the difference between bonds, which are being used heavily at Wembley, at Wimbledon, so on, a bunch of the new LA Rams stadium, SoFi Stadium, and a personal seat license. The mechanics of this and what it might mean for the finances.
So let's take personal seat licenses first. You basically are buying a license to own a seat in the future for a set period of time. So let's use simple numbers, not the ones that will probably be out there. You want a seat in what is the kind of current Sir Matt Busby stand, and you pay £1,000, and that gives you the right to purchase your season ticket for the next 10 years. Effectively, you're paying £100 a year. You'll pay that up front, and the club gets that and can spend that how they wish. It's a system that's widely used in America, and actually for a lot of new stadiums, for season ticket holders, which are the vast majority of ticket holders, it's actually mandatory. So you need to pay this license. The idea of a bond, slightly different, which is, you put up money for your seat up front, but you get a return on that over time from the club. Now, Arsenal did it, I think, in the past when they were, originally building or extending Highbury as well. As you mentioned, Wembley have done that, and I think there's actually way more interesting ways that you could leverage that in terms of giving you a discount on future season tickets that you buy. Pick a number, but it's all the ethos of this is a way to raise financing for building a stadium. So
I know someone who bought a halfway line bond at SoFi.
And
part of an investment bank spent $1 million. They casually dropped in a conversation. I was like, oh yeah, I was thinking of doing that, but I decided not to this time.
They raise a staggering amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and whatever discounts you give on future seats or returns there are, it's just the cost of interest, effectively, right? So it's just a way of raising finance. And really, SoFi cost $5 billion to build.
Yeah.
Because they were mad and dug into the ground. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And like, look, I have a natural tendency to say, a fan bond is way more equitable than a personal seat license. And I think that it's just creative things that you can do, right? Like actually build a connection with your local fan base. And look, it's not going to be affordable for everyone. So the fact that there is some optionality here, I think is good. The thing that concerns me, though, and the other thing that's good is it is geared more towards the premium and hospitality element. The thing that concerns me is how much premium and hospitality there is actually going to be in this new stadium.
Yeah, something like 20% of the stadium.
Yeah, and look, that's where Liverpool are at. And, I did the survey this morning and was looking at the structure or the kind of plan of what the stadium might look like in terms of seats. It's kind of like 3 tiers, bowl shape, and effectively the whole of the middle tier, which admittedly wasn't huge, the vast majority of tickets would be bottom and top tier, but all of that, apart from where the new Stretford end would be, was going to be some form of hospitality seats, also not the most expensive. And then a bit like you've got at Wembley, those seats that are all on the halfway line and just kind of either side of the halfway line, some very, very big pricey numbers.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
And look, the argument can be made that this subsidizes tickets for everyone else. I think it's just that it's the mix. It's the ratio of premium to non-premium that really matters for atmosphere. And also, for the love of God, we don't want this situation like you get at Wembley where there's just a big block of seats that just aren't full when the teams come out at half-time because everyone's sipping on their champagne and their prawn sandwiches or whatever, right? It's just get the mix right. Make sure ordinary people can afford to buy tickets as well. I do worry when they appoint US consultants on this kind of thing that it looks like more like the US model. Just for people who haven't checked this out, have a look at what's happening with the FIFA World Cup. They've really lent into the US model here. They've got categories of tickets. The lowest category of tickets is $60, right? But look at the maps of the stadiums. It's hardly any tickets. I mean, literally in hundreds, low hundreds in some cases of the worst possible tickets. Then you get dynamic pricing on top of that, a resale with no cap at all. And then the ticket agency fees, which are bad enough in the UK, adds 30% to the price of a ticket in the US for Ticketmaster, and then the tax goes on top, right? And you add those all together, and the cheapest way you could take a family of four would be about $500 for a World Cup game in the worst games that are the least popular. Now, maybe there'll be some that just aren't full at all, and you can get a $15, $20 ticket on the day sort of thing. Maybe. I don't know. But if you sort of start to apply that to the Premier League and Manchester United, which has a lot of demand and they've left a lot of money on the table over the years, then you start to look at something that rapidly increases in price. And of course the consultants will say, look, you are leaving millions of pounds on the table here because you sell out every game basically. And if United ever get good again, the demand would be even stronger. So it's a live question about how far they go down that route.
Yeah, and look, it's fine to leave money on the table. The best brands in the world, and I've worked with many of them, they frequently say, we don't mind. We don't mind leaving money on the table because we know over time we're still going to get it. Because if we have the right experiences, if we have the right people who are devoted to us in the way that, we want them to be, it will come, right? Like the fans ultimately are the kind of bedrock of the Manchester United brand. And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been more made of, this survey. And look, maybe the way it's been presented in terms of, for regular match goers, it'll be entirely optional. Yes, but if you look at, and look, this is all indicative, but if you look at some of the questions and some of the answers, the benefits of if you got a personal seat license, one of the options, indicative options, was you would have priority of getting tickets for your friends and family if you purchased a personal seat license, right? So then all of a sudden, think about what that really means for the stadium mix. It's not good.
Yeah, and for away tickets as well, right? So, what was the loyalty pool has changed somewhat over the years anyway. If this is a benefit, and I can't remember in the survey whether it said away tickets would be a priority or not as well, but let's assume that is probably one of the benefits.
Yeah.
Then that changes that mix as well, yeah. I mean, I can understand why there'd be some concern over this. All right. Well, we didn't bookend the Saudi conversation earlier with the potential friendly in Saudi. After Turkey slated the Glazers, or maybe Ratcliffe as well, or both, in his tweet, would United be playing a friendly in Saudi this winter? I mean, I can understand where the... Well, one, they want to bring stars to Saudi. It's a very young population, so their strategy is twofold. It's soft power abroad, it's entertain the masses at home, right? So split it into those two strategies and you kind of understand what they're trying to do. Bringing Manchester United for a glamour friendly in the middle of the season, in the winter when United have a 2-week break at some point in January. You can understand the attraction on both sides of that deal. It would raise several £1 million for United as well. And then there's the moral questions alongside the financial ones. Do you want to be part of their sports watching exercise or not? So.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have played friendlies in Saudi many moons ago.
Mm-hmm. Have had 2 deals with Saudi, one with STC back in 2013. That was a straight sponsorship, which lapsed. And then this weird one with... was some kind of academy deal where the club was supposed to be helping Saudi develop players, and that didn't really ever happen.
I don't recall that one.
2017, it was a kind of weird deal that just kind of disappeared after a while.
Got it. Yeah, look, there's an economic reality here, right? Which is, we know from the results, we talked about it last time, budget is probably based on us finishing about 6th or 7th. If we don't reach that, it's £3.5 to £4 million per place. So let's say we finished 8th or 9th. That needs to be plugged in some way, shape or form. If you want to back Ruben Amorim, give him more players in the style of football that this footballing structure is putting in place, need to get the money from somewhere. And... we're playing 38 league games. I don't know how many fixtures there'd be in the FA Cup if we got to the final.
6
or 7. Yeah. We were playing double that last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the argument about time on the training pitch, etc., and not overloading players. But if they're playing half the amount of games they were last year, I don't understand how they could possibly be really that tired.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that will be the rationale in the club as well. Record revenues last time out, but there'll be quite a significant hit through no European football and maybe we get one cup run. There isn't even very much prize money in the FA Cup. I mean, it'd just be, are we drawn at home?
And even then...
for away ties. and even then you give away 25% of the... Oh, no, 50% of the revenues, isn't it? 50%,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not the FA Cup isn't even that lucrative, really.
No.
Might be another route into Europe, though. So,
yes, very true. Europa League plays for the FA Cup win. Yeah, one would take that seriously. Yes, I would keep an eye on potential winter friendly and end of season friendlies as well, depending on where we're at in terms of European qualification. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they do something similar, because as you said there, it's all marginal gains on the finances here, and they're trying to make up this money. But yeah, they will. They will take a hit at the end of this financial year on this year's revenues, all priced in from a share price point of view. Actually, talking about share prices, did you see that little piece on Sky Sports? It was a bit weird that they did some analysis of the share price. I was like, I went and looked at the volumes just to remind myself of how little is actually traded. So in theory, about 20% of the club is free float on the stock exchange. It has almost no voting power. It's like 1% of the voting power. There's a bunch of institutions that still own something of United. Not much, right? Some of them sold out when Sir Jim came in. But yeah, so you got a 20% free float. The actual volumes, there was a tiny little spike when Turkey said, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I went, check the volume. It was about 50,000 shares, so £1 million worth of trading, right? That was a big spike for Manchester United trading. Normally, it's like 0.12% of the club is traded on any single day, right? And compare that to the volumes of big tech stocks. It's tiny fraction. The share price of Manchester United means absolutely nothing right now. Given the structure of the club, it's basically private, but with a bunch of public market regulatory rules around. It's the worst kind of thing you could possibly have.
Yeah. Like, I saw it, I shook my head, I was going to tweet about it, and then I was like, there's just no point, right? Like, if Sky Sports are trying to conduct investment analysis on a share price, I feel like they don't have enough to talk about.
They should have got Dermot Gallagher in there to give a VAR review of it as well, yeah.
Well, look, I think it just shows the footballing world needs Manchester United to do better. So, like, help us out.
Yeah, help us out as well. We get much better views and listens when United are playing well and not losing.
Give us a few more penalties. Bruno may not take them all.
It's funny, like over the years, I think my voice has tended to be, rational, not hysterical, not knee jerk, sometimes analytical, and that sounds critical sometimes. And people are like, "Oh, you love being negative." I'm like, Jesus fuck, guys, that's not why people come to this podcast. People want good news. If you want negativity and division, Brent is your man. He's he's cornered that market very successfully. He's very good at that. Just check out his feeds from time to time and see who he's picking on that day. But yeah, we want United doing well here. Thank you very much. A few little items before we leave. There's talk today of a new contract for Harry Maguire. But potentially 1 year, potentially 2, depending on the structure of the deal. I would assume at his age and his profile within the squad that would be on less wages than he is on now for a longer deal. And that might make a lot of sense because you'd amortise what is left on his contract, not much. Over a longer period of time, it won't make much difference there. But you don't have to buy in another player at whatever transfer fee and wages that they would cost.
Yeah, and I also think it's not really being talked about a lot at the moment. I think it will come the summer. We also need leaders and characters. And, like, how many players there can you say are real leaders on the pitch and off the pitch? Mm-hmm. Not many. Maguire is one of them. And look, you may not think he is the best defender in the world, but does he have a lot of other qualities that could be of value? And look, he's been through it all at United. So he's definitely got some pearls of wisdom for people who will be new to the club, who are going through the same things. If he's on lower wages, as I say, like, it's probably not going to be that detrimental to the squad, and it solves a potential headache pretty simply. I'm not opposed to this. I think it makes a lot of sense. Do I want to see him in the first team every week? Probably not. For a good United side. Do I want to see him alongside Matthias de Ligt? Absolutely not. It's not a well-balanced side when he does that. But from a financial point of view, it makes a lot of sense to extend this contract, I think. And I can see the rationale for everyone, unless Maguire wants to be playing every week, which is a fair comment as well, right? So if he's like, no, actually, I just want to play every week, great. If he's like, I want a one last payday, I want to go to MLS Saudi or something like that, fine. It doesn't seem like he's that kind of character really, but maybe that's all. It's all in play, but I suspect he'll sign a new contract. He's one of those leaders. How much PTSD he has from United's failures is another question. Yeah,
because Ruben Amorim talked about that in one of his many, many, many interviews. I think it was the TNT one when he was talking about Mbuma and Cunha having come into the club without that baggage.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point, right? Like, it might be one of the reasons why they're scared, maybe, of like sometimes like, doing the things that Ruben potentially wants them to do. Because it's like, you've got, instead of thinking, oh, there's massive upside to this, you're just thinking, what if I get this wrong? What's going to, what's going to happen behind me? What are the fans going to say?
Yep. Yeah. I'm absolutely sure that all factors in, and the fact that United are winning one game in 3 will also impact their thinking about whether this is a train they really want to be on or not.
Yeah.
So Jim said in that interview, Ruben gets 3 years. That was the big headline coming out of that. I mean, he's supported 100% until he's not, and that's when he's fired. So that's how it works, right? They backed Ten Hag with £200 million worth of players and then fired him 57 days later. So,
And also, what else is he going to say, right? Like, if he comes out and is in any way, shape, or form hesitant on that sort of question, well, it sends a message to the whole squad that they can.
Yeah. And get rid of the manager, yeah.
Exactly. And, I think my sense is there is a thinking amongst the senior leadership at the club that you can't have this level of player power dictating how the club is operated. They're clearly trying to get rid of that with the players that they are, they've been cycling through. So I think he probably, if Ruben continues to win 1 in 3 games, doesn't matter.
He will be gone.
He won't be there.
Yeah. The women's side won their first game against Vålerenga this week. Pretty tight game, decent performance. They've had a very good start to the new season. Champions League revenues on the women's side. The pool is... so the new cycle on the men's Champions League is coming up. That's why you see talk of Super League or A22 or the organisation behind Super League pushing... They are trying to restructure again the finances. UEFA are looking for about 5 billion a year, euros a year for that cycle, 3-year cycle from 27 to whatever. And on the women's side, so that's just a benchmark. On the women's side, it's about just a touch under 40 million euros a year is the whole pool in the Women's Champions League. So it's still a fraction of the money. But if you look at how United's women's team are financed, it's we're talking in euros, it's like 10 million. It's £9 million a year, something like that, as the total budget for everything, not just player budget. And so this is meaningful, I would say, for the women's side in terms of the money they could potentially get out of it, as well as exposure, right?
Yeah.
I think. But it is still, for the overall Manchester United P&L, it's not going to make much of a difference.
Equity value.
For the women's team... Equity value, absolutely, right? So if you have a United team doing well in a major European competition and it's the women's side, that means a lot for the brand. I saw a few United, I might have mentioned this before, a few prominent United women fans suggesting that the club should either sell the women's team to itself just to raise revenue, as Aston Villa have done and Chelsea and so on, or sell to an outside investor. And just because Ratcliffe has been so, he's not exactly been enthusiastic, let's say, about the women's team, that they should just get rid of the team. I cannot say strongly enough that how bad an idea that is, So just think long-term value of the club brand, what it would mean to have a successful women's side. We are on the cut. It might not be financially yet, but this market is very much growing. Look at some of the crowds that Arsenal get. 100,000 people at Camp Nou for the Barcelona feminine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Feminine, I think.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough, yeah. United aren't there yet with the crowds. We'll see what we get for United Women versus PSG in a few weeks' time at Old Trafford. It'd be nice to have a really big crowd there and an atmosphere. But this is a market that's on the cusp of becoming something really big. And Manchester United is Manchester United. It's one club. And so this is important.
Yeah, I did actually watch a little bit of the game against Vålerenga. I do wonder why they don't put all the games on Old Trafford. I think
it's an atmosphere thing. They're worried they won't sell. They won't sell enough.
I mean, they could do something on ticket prices. It's not like Lee Valley was full.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I was surprised actually. I mean, they got 8,000 for the Arsenal game, I think it was. And which was a good crowd in a stadium that doesn't hold that much more than that. Mm-hmm. That's a pain to get to, as everyone has noted. There's a bus you can get out there, but it's sort of 10 miles east of Old Trafford, and all of that. Yeah. So when I've asked people about why would you want more games played at Old Trafford, mostly people have said no, because they're worried about the atmosphere. They did the Everton game last season, and there were not many people there, and a half-empty stadium is worse than a nearly full Sports Village.
Yeah, fair. I mean, maybe have the tickets for free.
Yeah, or low price, or people come in and buy beer and stuff like that as well. The model that Arsenal have taken up to get the atmosphere there, even if it's cheap tickets. You get 60,000 people in, you make revenue other ways.
Exactly.
For sure. I think we might have got through our list.
God, that's good going. In under an hour.
It was rapid stuff, folks. Play this on 0.75 speed. I don't know about you. I cannot stand that. My wife listens to podcasts at 1.5 speed. No. And she listened to what I have. I do a VC podcast as well each week. And she listened to that one. She was like, "Well, it's a bit rapid how you cut this together." I was like, "You're listening at 1.5 speed. So, yeah, of course it's a bit rapid. The cuts to the next section."
Yeah, I've not got on board with that trend. It just
cannot do it.
It just does not sound right to me.
No, there was some talk of Netflix allowing you to do that as well, that you could binge your Netflix shows at 1.5 speed.
Look, I guess, people have got less time, and so if they want to consume content, they need to do it at 2x the speed. Not sure.
You have two TVs. You have one in this ear and you have one in that ear.
Everyone can multitask, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, people listen to our podcast while watching Brent blame Bruno Fernandes for sacking 3 managers. Obviously. Okay, everyone, you can check Jamie out on Substack, and I can't recommend it enough. Subprime Goals on Substack, his newsletter on mostly Manchester United, but other clubs as well.
There's going to be
finances.
There's going to be a little mini series coming out on, I want to say, player wages in the transfer market overall. And there's been a couple of things that have been happening, which I don't think have been getting enough attention. So hopefully in the next few weeks that will start to come out, and we'll go through all the how much are players actually paid, and then all the implications about club power versus player power and the transfer market.
Very good. Looking forward to that. You can find Jamie on Twitter and Blue Sky. Search for Subprime Goals. The handle is incomprehensible. So, yeah. I have to search for it every single time.
I've started to, make them all the same. I still need to change my Twitter one, though.
Yeah. It should just be Subprime Goals. There you go. Then we can find you. NQAT Pod for me on every social channel and on Substack. I need to write one today. What should I write about? Oh, I'll have a think. Need to write one today. I always say I'll go a bit lighter on the word count, and then it ends up being 2,500 words anyway.
You're just so eloquent. You
just can't help myself. Verbose. Yeah. You use 25 words when you could use 2. Or, as one commenter once put to me, stop analysing the shit out of everything, Ed. On that wonderful note, we'll bid you farewell, Jamie. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Ed. Wish everyone
listeners,
a happy...
thanks for listening. Check us out on patreon.com/NQATpod for our extra shows, and we'll catch you on the next one of these sometime in the future.
Yeah, happy international break, everyone.